on today's show, I honestly don't know that I had been this nervous for a guest in quite some time. We've had some pretty high profile people on the podcast, and this one in particular is one that I personally watch the content that he does. I'm a gigantic raving fan of him. Dave Bell, how are you doing today?
I'm doing good, but tone it down a little, Jay, please. I mean, you've had a lot of anyway. Now
I
I'm just set up to disappoint everybody, dude. Thanks for
I
that.
I genuinely think that the Dos Equis guy they always said was the most interesting man in the world.
No,
I think you might have kicked him out of that seat. I watch your content on a very regular basis. I think what you do is fascinating, and when we were able to work this out to get you on the show, I was just so excited about it. And my wife is very familiar with you because every time she walks by and I have YouTube on in the living room, your face is in our living room. So an absolute pleasure to have you on.
well, thank you for making me a part of your family. I appreciate that.
So let's kick things off by getting to know you a little bit better. Anybody that follows your social channels knows that you've got a lot of experience in this industry, but where did all of that start at? What kind of stoked the fire on that interest?
Poverty stoked the interest. When I was 12 and 13, I was throwing a paper out for the Miami Herald. And back then you could get a learner's permit. I think it was about 14 and a half to 15 years old. And I wanted to be able to drive, and my parents, my dad was in the military, not an officer. We were just enlisted people. And back, you didn't make any money. I didn't realize we were poor, but we were poor. And my old man said, "You want a car? You got to get one." Start working on it. So I got a little, and there's another story attached to this, but I got a little Volkswagen Beetle with a 1600 cc in it, and it didn't run. And so I pulled that motor apart and rebuilt it. The side story to that is everybody around here, there's a standing joke. You will get fired if you've taken an air-cooled bug engine into this place. I will fire you. But anyway, so I got the thing running and I kind of liked that, and I'd worked with my dad on cars and things like that. And then I would walking by, I was in high school. I was walking by a garage down there in Miami called Friendly Checker Cab and Limousine. And back then there would just be like carports in South Florida. There's just carports, there's no garages that you pull into air conditioning. And guys were working under carport things on cars, these cabs. And I just would look through the fence. I'd be like, man, I want to do that. And I saw all this. I mean, it was a wrecking yard, basically. A cab company back then was a wrecking yard. Let's just hack this thing. They call them hacks. The cars are hacks. There's a reason you call a cab driver a hack because he's driving a hack of a car. And so I went to the guy in there. His name was Joey. I'll still remember the guy's name. He was the shop boss. And I begged him every day for like a couple of weeks, as I recall, for a job. And he was like, "Kid, I was 16 at the time." He said, "You're no." And I finally went to him and I said, "Look, I will work for free, bro. I will do whatever you tell me to do for free. If after 2 weeks, I'm a pain in your butt, I'm not worth it, kick me out of here." He gave me a job like 2, 3 days into it, paid me. I think I was making, honest to goodness, $2.15 or something like that an hour. Child labor, I don't. But back then it was an okay wage. And I started cleaning out taxi cabs and limousines. I cleaned them. And in the mid 70s, cleaning cabs out of in South Miami, Florida, that's an interesting job, bro. I got
I
stories.
bet.
That's another thing. But and then I got moved to the oil change pit and then brakes and then just go a water pump and things like that. And I did that for a few years and learned a lot. Learned how to fix stuff quick because in a cab, it's about get the cab back out. And a lot of baling wire and band-aid work. I'll tell you that. But that also gave me the understanding like I didn't like that. I didn't like that, but I sure knew how to do it. I was taught by the world's finest mechanics on how to do baling wire and band-aid work, and I realized I didn't like that stuff. And so I went from there, and dealerships. I spent a lot of time in different dealerships, and then in 1990, uh, I'm getting way ahead of how I got in this industry, but Miles was born, and you know Miles.
Yeah,
Yeah,
great guy.
everybody, he's super young man. He was born. I finally got Allie to marry me, my wife. She's still my wife. Uh, to marry me, and we drove up to Jackson Hole, got married over the weekend. Miles was like 3 months old, and came home from work, and I got fired, or got not from work, came home from getting married on the weekend, 3 day weekend up to Jackson Hole. Justice of the Peace married us. It was pretty cool back then. And came home and they fired me. And I went home at 10 o'clock in the morning, brand new bride, a 3 month old baby. And I was thinking about lying to her, just saying, I'm going to go find another job. And I told her, I said, okay, they fired me. Oh, and I knew I'd find another job. Well, I started going to these other dealerships. Well, the dealer principals had all found out a better way, they thought, of running their dealerships. And it was called communism. And I didn't want to work that way. That's actually why I got fired. So I started my own business, and I got a 4x8 sheet of plywood, put my name on it, and started in a storage unit in the dead of winter in Utah with no heat.
How did you end up in Utah? Like, so that piece from Florida to Utah, it's not like you're moving next door. You moved across the country.
Well, when my dad retired from the military, I'd always spent my life on the coast. My parents said they're moving to Rexburg, Idaho. Now, back in the 1978, when they moved to Rexburg, Idaho, I remember looking, I had to get the atlas out. And back then, that was the encyclopedia, there was no internet. And I remember thinking, Rexburg, Idaho, and it's in the middle of like the United States, so to speak. And I thought, my old man's lost his mind. There's no ocean. He's going crazy. The guy's going nuts. But he'd retired from the military. Him and my mom they wanted to move to the mountains. Had no family, they didn't have anybody. So they moved away. I stayed in Florida for about a year and a half. Being a young man, 18 years old, it just, I
Yeah.
finally, I finally went home at 20, went to Idaho. The cultural shock of my life, going from South Florida, where, in the late 70s, going to Rexburg, Idaho, and then St. Anthony, and I mean, it still would be a cultural shock. And then I just said, I got to get out of here. So I just headed south, got to Salt Lake, got some jobs down here, and met Allie, and the rest is kind of history.
That
Yeah.
is wild. It
Well,
just
it's not that wild. It's just, it's just somebody's life. But the point is, I just kept working and having a vision of what I wanted in my life. That's why everything always works out. You
yeah.
don't go on a journey without a destination in your head, man. You're gonna wander around.
It's good life advice in general. So you put your shingle out and you start growing the business. One thing I'll give you a lot of credit for there is opening a business in a place where maybe you didn't know a lot of people, right? So you kind of have to go get that work to do the work, right? How did you go about that part?
Well, I mean, I'll answer your question, Jay, but I've been developing a program. I'm doing a digital product that's going to be released, but that is one of the questions. So I'm going to say it was extremely difficult in 1990 to hang your shingle out. Was basically, you're not kidding. It was 4x8 sheet of plywood, and I actually used a can of Krylon, and I made my stencils, and I painted my name on the thing. It was ridiculous. I wish I had a photo, man. I swear it was ridiculously embarrassing, is what it was. But and it was in a terrible place. I went and found the cheapest storage unit I could because I was a new baby, broke, fired. Here we go. I mean, you couldn't have been more poverty stricken than I. We had a little bit. We had $8,000 in the bank back then. That was not too bad for a young couple. But my wife
Yeah.
had a master's degree. She was actually the moneymaker. But with a new baby, she had quit because she was like, "Okay, I'll let you take care of me, and I'll even let you marry me." And then I come home and I'm like, I just got fired.
So about that.
So anyway, but It was extremely difficult because, you know, you hang out, you're single, you had business cards that you would pass out at the grocery store, put them in people's windshield thing. My wife would like bless her heart, she became my marketing uh, department. And she would tell people, and we had a few jobs, and then I just built it on word of mouth. And I worked for dirt cheap. I don't remember what my shop rate was, but I think it was like 28 bucks an hour or something like that. I mean, a long time ago, 35 years. And I think it was something like that, you know. But I was the guy to answer the phone. I was the guy to fix the cars. I was the guy that called, you know, the parts department. Because back then you had to make a phone call to order a part. You had to, you know, you couldn't like just transfer the cost of the part and the part number and everything to your invoice. You know how it is today. I mean, it was as archaic as it could be. And that's why I know today is so much easier. I get a lot of comments in my social media. People say, it's impossible to do what you did, Dave. I'm like, you don't even know how much easier it is to do today. So quit your whining, dude. And you know, you could do it.
It's so true too. Like just the ability to put a message out on Facebook and have your friends share it or something, like when you're just getting started, it is substantially easier now than it was back when you started.
Yeah, Jay. Back then, I had to wait because they only printed the phone book one time a year. And you know, you remember the phone books? Everybody's
Yeah.
yellow pages. Remember that? You could only get in there one time a year, and then you had to decide you had the money for a quarter ad, half page, full page. And what did you want to put on the page? Because your keywords you put on a page is basically, so you put brakes, clutches, shocks, struts. You know, you just put a bunch of words, kind of what you did when you first started your website. And then you had to wait. So now you start a business. Now you wait to pay up, get in the phone book. Then it gets published, and then you're waiting for somebody to pick that damn thing up. And then that's why everybody started their businesses with AA Garage, AAA Garage, Andy's Garage. You know, you remember? You know, I'm
I
not making
do.
this up. I'm not making this up. And today,
No.
it's so much better for a mechanic. All you got to do, dude, put your quality in front of as many people as you can, and you don't have to wait one time a year to do it. You can refresh it every day. You can, you know. So in that one regard, I'm tired of the people saying it's impossible to do today. That's only one thing that makes it so much more accessible for a guy or a gal to jump in with any business, any service business. Jump in, take the lead.
Yeah. And that's not even starting to talk about the service information that's available at your fingertips now, the tools that make it easier. I'm sure some of the tools you probably had to make back then just to get stuff done. It's a lot easier now.
I wish. Jay, do you remember the Mitchell catalog? They were brown, they had plastic on the outside, and they were big like this, you know, and you had to buy a whole rack. It was like buying encyclopedias. Now I know a lot of young people going to listen to this, they're going to have to look up the word encyclopedia. They don't know what I'm talking about. And you had a room in your shop with manuals. And you had to look up the time to do the job, then you had to look in the paper. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we shouldn't complain right now.
Oh, that's why anytime somebody says something to me about, you know, how much harder it is, you know, to do it today, I can counter it that fast with you are kidding yourself. There's nothing harder today, you know, to start a business.
Want to build a pipeline of young technician talent in your shop? Check out School Assist. Powered by WrenchWay and ASE, School Assist makes it easy for shops and dealerships who are looking for young technician talent to build relationships with instructors and their students. Schools post specific requests for things like equipment, tools, advisory committee members, shop visits, and more. Shops can view these requests and directly connect with program instructors all in one place. Over 2,800 schools and 2,000 shops are already using School Assist to build valuable connections. See if it's right for your shop. Learn more at wrenchway.com/school-assist. Link is in the show notes. I want to go back to when you're getting this thing off the ground and maybe the first time you hired an employee and really kind of walk through your mindset of the transition from technician to owner, and if you recall it being like a light switch where it just clicked, or did it take you some time to kind of walk your way into that leadership side of things?
Well, Jay, I'm going to burst your bubble right now, dude, because you started out thinking I was the cat's meow. So I'm going to answer your question, but I'm going to tell you right now. I've been in business. This is our 36th year. I don't think that you said an owner. I don't think I became an owner till about five, you know, 4 or 5 years ago. Up until that point, I was an operator. So
What changed? What changed over that time? Because you're looking at that's probably, at the time you're 25 or so years in business. You had a long time in business. What was it that made you change?
it's usually, if you think that, you'll know the answer to that question, pain and suffering. We don't normally change anything in our lives, whether it's a personal thing, a business thing, until the pain exceeds a threshold where we're like, I can't live this way anymore. So, and I think that's a general answer. When you ask anybody, why did you change? They can give you the story, but the theme of the story is pain became so much that I had to find another way, or give up. And I'm not the kind of give up guy. So I found another way, and it's been wonderful. And I wish I look back now, of course, and I can see that I could have done it at year 15, but I wasn't in enough pain, I guess. And my desire to control so much, and I mean that it is a desire for me. I'm a very uh, being an engine builder, you don't kind of, I don't think, I didn't start my business out as an engine builder. It ended up morphing into that because I found I could control every piece down to the 0.0001. And that I found that, of course, this is my life, 65 years I've been on this earth. I'm now looking back and going, that was comfort for me because I could control everything to the minute degree. And I knew that it was just how I wanted it. Well, that can also be like most of your everybody's, the gifts that God gives us can also be a wicked curse too if we don't find the humility and the growth in that and all that. So that's why it took me so long to become an owner and not an operator. So
It's that's a really good answer, and I think that there probably are a number of current shop owners maybe listening to this podcast that are probably going through similar things that you went through. When you say it took you that long, it was the same exact thing for my dad and our family shop, right? It took 25 years of pain and suffering to understand, like, I don't know what it was that made it click, but it was like, okay, I'm putting in all these hours, I'm doing all of this work, and we're barely scraping by. And why are we doing this? And I think it took getting to that point to where then you start to look for additional resources. You start to look at different ways of doing things, and trying to get out of that technician mindset a little bit. There are some really, really big advantages to having that technician mindset, because I think the critical thinking aspect that's related in a technician can really translate well to business leadership. But it does take maybe that shift from trying to do it all yourself to understanding that you need other people to do some of these things and fill some of the gaps that maybe you're not so good at.
yeah, it's well said, Jay. And during that time when you're trying to figure, you're going through a lot of suffering. You're not letting people grow. You're trying to stifle them. Put your shell over top of them and things like that. Because you think that's the best way to do it. And that's not fair to other people. And you know, I do pretty dang well. We don't have turnover anymore. We don't. We really we take our time on hiring. We usually do 3 interviews, and they go through different people and things like that because, I like to, as you see, I'm a fisherman. I got one of my kids sailfishes behind me here. Everything kind of comes back to the ocean with me or sailing. You know, a good shop is like an old sailing ship. And I think the mechanics are the ones manning the oars. You know, they're down in there. I mean, because they're the workers, man. That ship ain't going nowhere. You got to have service riders. You got to have parts people. You got to have customer support. You know, if you've got if you're doing the right thing, like we talked about earlier, and you're advertising yourself, you might have a marketing division. You know, or you might sub some of that out. And your CFO. You know, you don't have to have a CFO in house. I have one now because I'm big. But you know, at some point you don't have one. You know, you might have an outside accountant bookkeeper comes in. But as you develop and you grow that, they're all working on this ship, and it's so important because you're out at sea a long time. You know, this is not an easy industry to be in. It's not an easy industry to make money at, and it's not an easy industry to keep your head above water and and stay proud of it because you know you can make mistakes, and it's how you fix them that really matters. We all make mistakes, but we're all on that ship rowing, and the number one job of everybody on that ship is to keep the guys that are manning the oars fed and watered, meaning the mechanics. For me, that's the backbone of my business. And even now that I have a different division, I have the other divisions. We have our media division and also then, you know, the engine division, because then we also have 30 bays of repair in here. You know, this is a 30 bay shop with a full machine shop. So, you know, I got to keep a lot of bays full. And so there's a lot of things that have to work. Well, if you don't, if getting back to people, I'm going to tell you, I go all over the place. So just stay with me.
You're good.
So me and Dave Kindig were he won the Riddler Award this last year, and he was coming back from SEMA. We were sitting together on the flight back from SEMA this year, and you know that car won Car of the Year. I mean, you know, it's just a gorgeous car.
A Corvette might be one of the most beautiful cars I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah,
Unbelievable.
and if you get into a shop and you see the attention to detail, I mean, it boggles the mind. It's like it's at the level of like a machinist, you know, doing an engine, but it's in a different realm. But we're talking and I, you know, we're talking about how he's got, you know, I'm right at 30 employees. He's a little over 40, and you know, and he's turning. I mean, he's got a lot of people. Got to keep him busy and working. But I said, what is the secret, Dave, to your success? Now, besides his super brain, you know, the guy's a freaking like the Michelangelo of car design. Him and Chip Booth and you know all those guys are you know Mount Rushmore shit. You know, I'm not that guy. So, and he just said, just like this, he says, I get reminded every time I go into my office. And I go, and I knew there was a story because that's how he works too. It must be Dave's. We're all weird. I said, what's in your office, dude? You know, he goes, wallpaper of all my people. Wallpaper of all my people. I'm reminded every day that this place is here because of these people on the wall. And I thought, shit, that's on point.
Brilliant.
It's on point. You know, he acknowledges that. If you and you got to acknowledge that, but not just acknowledge it verbally, but you got to believe it in your soul, or you will not grow and you will not become an owner. You'll always be an operator. And your people so badly want you to become an owner. I've noticed that in my people. When my people saw me become an owner, their attitude not only towards me and towards their direct supervisor and the operations manager, you know, it changed. There was a level of respect and a level of like I can go there, I can do. I'm just telling you, I would encourage any guys out there that you know that are in this 15 plus year, if they can do it sooner than that, wow.
Yeah.
But you know, I'm thinking about year 15, you better be figuring that out, or you're just going to be going to more pain, more pain. Yeah.
One of the things that I thought was really cool about you was that you had put some content out where you're addressing your team and in being able to really lead the room, if that makes sense. I think you do such a good job at having the personality to get people's attention, to get them to listen. And I think that's the sign of a really true leader is when you can stand in the front. And we've all been around technicians that I think at times will jab each other when the boss is talking, right? And kind of make shorthanded comments or do something that's a little disrespectful. I think just seeing your content and the way you speak to a room is, you've got that gift of command of being able to capture their attention and be able to uh I don't know, like you've got the respect of them. And I think that at times can be very, very hard in a shop environment. And I think you've done it brilliantly.
Oh, that's you keep doing it, Jay. You're putting me on a pedestal, so let me knock myself off of it for you here. Um, what you're noticing is an authentic. My wife would, and I know this is going out. My wife would prefer I use a different term, but I call it it's an authentic manipulation. Okay. Now I'm trying to influence people. You can influence people for the good. You can influence for the bad. I've chosen mentally in my life to try to influence not only my children, everybody that I come in contact with in a positive way, because it gives me a better feeling than if I influence badly. We all have done that, and so figure it out, and then set your standard. So there's a couple things in play here, and thank you for pointing it out, and I'll try to break it down for people. The best you can, what you want to do is influence people. So you have an opportunity. Can you influence them for the good or the bad? Make a decision, set a standard, and then stick to it. Now, add like a standard, like, okay, I want to lose weight. That's great. That's a decision. But then you got to have a standard. I mean, I will get up no matter what and work out every day. And your standard is if you fall off of that, you don't let it go 2 days. Okay. So set your standard. Now, do I always do that? No. So first off, I'm off the stool. I'm not on a pedestal. I fail all the time to be influential in a great way to people, but that's my standard. So I go at it that way. Then how do you do that? I find that the best way to influence people is first off to find out what their dream is. Do they want to lose weight? And then help them to see a standard that they can put in their life. You know, I want to make more money at your shop, Dave. I want to move up in the machine shop. I want to learn how to do this. I want to run the dyno. I want to be in engine development. Okay, here's the standards to get there. Give them a roadmap. And then you'll see their ears kind of go like that. But if you don't know what they want, and that's why the hiring process, going back to, 3 people. I don't want somebody coming on a boat that doesn't want to sail across the ocean, dude. That's a problem. That's a real problem for me. I can't turn the ship around, dude, take you back to port, so to speak. So let's make sure we get the sailors that we want on the boat, and then we're going to treat them really good and find out, you know, what ports they want to go to, what they want to see, what kind of jobs they want to do on a boat, and then help and show them the standards of how they're going to do that. And then it ends up working.
I I can't tell you how much I love what you just said there. And getting the right people obviously is a huge element, but the intentionality that you've got behind that, I think, is something that a lot of business leaders miss. Everybody can say that they appreciate people or that they want to have the right people on, but you've got a process in which you're taking them through, and then setting that standard is I think we as an industry a lot of times fail to do that. And I think there are times where maybe we put all technicians in the same boat, right? We think they're all the same person, that they all have the same interests, and we fail to recognize them as an individual. And I think that is a true struggle for a lot of shop leaders, is because if you think they're all the same, you're going to treat them all the same. And it might not be the greatest, but if you actually take the time to get to know your people and understand their backgrounds and what they really care, what drives them, I think you have a fighting chance at being a great leader, right? It just takes that listening and understanding who they are.
Yeah, people don't. I'm not a great leader. I will back away from that, Jay. I just um I have a dream to be the finest shop in the United States, and to be an example of what can is possible in this industry. That really, my mission statement is to show the world what's possible as a good mechanic. That's as short as I can make it. And so I want to I want to kind of encourage that culture around here. Um, and in order to do that, you have to do what you just said. You have to find out what people's dreams are. and I tell people, we've hired people, good people, and all of a sudden you realize, no, they don't want to be sailing on a ship for the rest of their life. And, when we get to port, we let them off. And it's been, I've got a friend that worked for me for 5 years. He's a lawyer now. And he wanted to go into law. And we talk while he's working on cars and, and we're still friends. But, I thought you lost your freaking mind, dude. You want to be a lawyer. I mean, lawyer, come on. And it was important to him. And now that I think back on it, I wasn't such a good leader to him. I could have been a better leader and learn more like why he wanted to do that. I've since done that because we stayed friends. But that's how you learn, man. But the other way you learn, mentors. And I know I'm a mentor now. I got that. And I take that very seriously in the way that I operate my life, mostly for my sons. I want to show my sons what's possible if you live a good life. But I listen to mentors all the time, dude. There's another thing, if you wanted to listen to a mentor back in 1990, you had to go find a cassette tape or an 8-track and put it in and listen to Tony Robbins. Now, instead of scrolling through crap on the internet, go find somebody like Tony Robbins is on there. I'm a loss right now, but every morning I listen for 15 minutes. Somebody that I like, Brandon Bouchard's another guy.
Oh, great one.
Ed Milet, I like it. You got, I could start rolling them here, but I just find guys that and I do a 15-minute shower speaker talk. I call them a motivational mentorship talk. Gets my brain straight. Again, that's my standard. I don't start my day without my mind set on. I don't let it just go, "Wait, what am I going to do today?" But
it's funny. Yeah. Oh, sorry, Dave. Go ahead.
You can choose to either do that or you can choose not to. And then I'm sure as I get older, there's something else I'll pick up, and because I'll think, oh, I want to raise my standard.
We had Victoria Thomas, who's the owner and CEO of Kelly Moss Motorsports, and they're based out of Fitchburg, Wisconsin. Winningest team in Porsche history, believe it or not, in just outside of Madison, Wisconsin, in our backyard up here. She does the exact same thing that you just said. Her first thing in the morning she does is go and listen to Darren Daily by Darren Hardy. And that is she kind of refers to it as her switch, because when she sits down and listens to that, that's how she starts her day every day, and it helps her get her brain right. And I think hearing you say the exact same thing, I think there's a pattern of successful people that are doing that same exact thing, that it's probably pretty good advice for anybody to take.
Oh yeah, bro. I'm telling you right now, they don't call it copying anymore. They call it modeling. That's the new term. Hello, the recipe is in front of you. It's so easily in front of you now because of social media. Social media has a great thing, and of course it's got a crappy thing. And choose wisely, because it's your life.
Yeah, and it's so much of it is what you choose to put in your head and what you consume, and I think it is truly garbage in, garbage out, right? If you are choosing correctly and doing a good job at it, I think you are going to have a better outlook, a better attitude. And I even try to get that across to a lot of technicians, right? Because if you do go on social media and you go onto a page that it's just all techs ripping the industry or ripping their jobs, like what do you expect you're going to do when you go into work, right? Like you're feeding yourself that just crap content.
Things sure have changed since the old days of wrenching on vehicles in the driveway. Modern-day vehicles, hybrids, and EVs contain more than 10 million lines of code and require a keen understanding of technology to diagnose and repair. ASE certified technicians are in high demand, and the earnings of an ASE certified tech can be as much as 20% more than a non-certified technician. The launchpad to a high-tech career begins at ase.com/careers.
if you are excited about this industry, and which you should be, because I guarantee you, I will have by the year 2030, I'll have mechanics in my shop clearing 200 grand a year. I guarantee it.
I agree.
Yeah, I guarantee there's guys in here that'll be at 200 grand in the next 4 years. No doubt about it. And that's and with full benefit package, working 5 days a week, or they can work 4 if they want, just grind out the hours. And that's not a bad career for a guy that can hit the ground running without all this debt from, government student loans and all this other. I'll go Mike Rowe on you now. But, by the time he's 25, I got guys in here in my machine shop. By the time they're 25, they're 100 grand a year, making chips, dude. And they're good men. They're young men. They just want a chance. They got no debt. They're making more money than anybody they know. And there's opportunities for growth. That's not a bad thing.
No, I think that's what most young people want, right? They want that path. They want the ability to make their lives better. I think when I had somebody comment on a LinkedIn post of mine yesterday that he is a tech, and it was a very negative comment to something that I had said that should have been taken as a positive, right? And what I told him was like, hey, I just like to talk to you and kind of get your mindset and your like what's happening that has set you down this negative path so far. And maybe you are working for a shop that's not treating you right. And that's totally fair. There are still, I don't care what kind of business you have, there's still crappy businesses out there.
Yeah.
But if you find yourself in that situation, like it's up to you to make your situation better, right? Like you can find a better path if you want to.
Be careful what you put in your head, man, because it's the reality of your life. I protect it like it is your life, because it is, man. That's a big thing for me. When I hear people pissing and moaning, I'm like, okay, I'll listen to you for a minute. Okay, gotcha. How's that working out for you, bro?
You're just going to be miserable. Yeah, there's no point in it. And I think if you can correct your path, it can make your life, not just your work life, your life in general, so much better if you just reframe your outlook on things a little bit.
And let's talk about a good mechanic. So a good mechanic with not so good a skill. Maybe he's just not the brightest bulb in the lamp. You know what I mean? But he's a good mechanic. And then you got this prima donna, super intelligent guy. Okay. Now, only one ingredient is going to make him different and going to make one of them rise to the top. And that is the willingness of one of them not to give up. Because even the smartest guy is going to get his ass handed to him on a job. And he can start whining and moaning and pissing and moaning. But you got the turtle over here. This is the rabbit, the tortoise and the hare. This turtle over here, and I got one. I got a few of them. Tyson, my foreman, has been with me over 30 years. He's the tortoise. He just keeps his head down, keeps going, never complains, and he always rises to the top, bro. Because he never let that voice in his head go, this sucks, I can't, blah, 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 this thing kicking my butt, blah, blah, I can't figure this out, this stupid, the engineers have made this, okay, we'll get it all out. Now we still got to fix the car.
Yeah.
What's your quickest way to do that is to keep a good mindset. And it's the same way in your life. And mechanics can either be really good at that. And I'm not saying Tyson's not super smart and everything. I don't want to say that. But his greatest quality, and I think this is the greatest quality of even an average mechanic. An average mechanic can be great if he will not pollute his mind with negative, limiting thoughts. And because in this industry, bro, you're going to get a basket of them every day. It's hard. It's not easy work. It's not.
It's not. And I think that speaks to my respect level of techs and anybody that's really good at it, because I talk a lot in our content about it. I was a terrible technician to start off with. So I watched all of the guys in my dad's shop growing up, and I'm like, oh, that's, that I grew up around this stuff. I'm going to be good at it naturally. And then I went into it. I've talked to Miles about this, where I'm like, I was so bad. And it gave me a completely different appreciation for the industry, for the folks that can do the stuff. And you're absolutely right. The ones when to me, there's nothing more beautiful than a very polished technician that views it as a craft and is really, really passionate about learning and getting better and getting more efficient. And when you see those people and their workstations are just beautiful, they've got, it's everything is just laid out nicely. They're organized. I idolize those people. I think they are the best of the best.
Yeah. Well, and maybe they are, but it goes a house of order works. I hate grease. I mean, if you walk around my shop, you won't see no grease, man. I got white floors. People give me, I make sure the guys we hire are like okay with that because I'm like, I'm not a pack rat, dude. I don't want to walk to your bench and pick up something. Go, what is this? And you're like, well, that's a 1977 voltage regulator off a Lincoln Continental. I might, and it's a good one. I might need that someday to test a bad one.
They're $15 now. No. That one of the things that as we're talking shop here that I find fascinating about you is how diversified what you work on in the shop. All of the different, if I can say it, the diversification of the repairs that you're doing in the shop. You're doing the engine building, you're doing repairs both automotive and diesel, right? Kind of across the board.
Yeah, well, there's 30 bays, but that'll kind of feed into what we just were speaking about. Any system, I don't have technicians here now. This is gonna maybe this. I hope this lights up some people because I call them. Some people get one of my most honestly. One of my biggest comments that get back and forth is when I call an engine a motor, a motor and an engine. And people are like, I mean, man, the
beside themselves.
armchair quarterbacks, they're all over themselves about that. So technician or mechanic, remember for me, but a mechanic to me is a guy that can fix anything. That's why I'm a mechanic. I've never met anything that I couldn't get through. I might need more information. I might need to outsource. That don't mean I know everything I need to know how to fix that. But that means I will go figure out whatever I need to do to go from A to B. And at the end of that, I'll have something that I can present that I would call my craftsmanship. That is what I'm talking about as a mechanic. And so the answer, my diversification, I encourage that with my people. That is the mindset that I want us all to have around here. I understand that you haven't worked on this particular emission, this after treatment system on this, this Dodge, this Cummins. I get that you haven't worked on it. So what's the problem? It all comes back to my 4 C's: condition, cause, correction, confirm. You can fix anything, including your own life, if you'll do that. What's the condition? What's the cause? Be honest with yourself. Don't make it too big. Don't make it too small. What's the correction? Those are options. You've got an obstacle, which is an opportunity with options to overcome. Same thing. Condition, cause, correction, confirm. So you've got, and that's how so you're asking how I do this. I teach this. I teach you how to think. It's not so much about mindlessly, okay, tell me how to do this and I'll move my hands and undo that and replace the part. It's like figure out how's that part supposed to work in conjunction with the whole system so that you have an understanding. And man, I'm telling you what, Jay, when you teach a guy how to think like that, you've given him, instead of giving him a fish, man, you've taught him how to freaking slay the fish. And his confidence goes up. So that's the point. You teach him from a little point, okay, I don't know how to do this, blah, blah, blah. So you start to teach him how to think. You say, okay, this is an opposition. You got a problem. It's an opposition, which is an opportunity. The opportunity is like, hey, I get to make money with options. So I'll help, we can help with the options. There's go read about it, go talk to Joey about it, do this, and then you overcome. And then there's a secret one. Those are the 4 O's. The secret one, to obliterate the competition. You get those 4 right, you'll start obliterating the competition. And that's what I teach in the shop. And that's why we can diversify, because nobody in here has the mindset like, well, I don't know how to fix that. No, you do know how to fix it. You just don't know what you need to know yet how to fix it.
That is such a great mindset to just almost that thought process of it doesn't matter what it is, we're going to win, right? Like it's just that it is a winner's mindset, and something that, I think there's a lot of shops that, we don't work on this, we won't touch that, we won't do this. And I think you almost give off that sense to a customer that maybe you don't know what you're talking about, right? Or like, if you can't fix this, why can't you fix it? You're the person that's supposed to be repairing my stuff. And so it's just it can be a crutch at times if you have that to lean on. And I don't think that's the healthiest thing in the world.
Well, it's not, but remember, I told you earlier, I will refuse some work. You bring me an air cooled, I'm done. I'll shake your hand. I'll sell you a t-shirt.
Wish you a good day.
I wish you a good day. I'm done.
But I think one thing I want to circle there that you did was you kind of, in a self-deprecating way, said you're not a good leader. But what you just did there and how you teach somebody how to think is leadership at its core. And I think there are a lot of us that came up in the industry where you start off in a shop and maybe you're afraid to ask a question, or if you do ask a question, you get the typical "I learned the hard way, so you need to learn the hard way" type of response, right? Like, I think a lot of us grew up that way.
Isn't those prideful pricks, aren't they just so helpful to the whole world? Seriously. I like, oh, so you were endowed with that knowledge and you feel like it's yours special to keep. That's yeah, and that's just a dang shame. You want to try to avoid having people like that around you. I don't know, the fruit that they offer is not very, it's bitter and it's not good. So
Yeah.
guys that are doing that, my prayer for you is you stop, because it will bleed not only to the men that you get to work next to, but it'll bleed to your grandchildren and your family. It's not a good way to be, man. You can't turn off that poor attitude on and off, like, that bleeds into the rest of your life. And I hate to see that. It's heartbreaking.
Over the course of your career, you've done all of these amazing things, but a recent development to that has been the social media side. I think last I checked, you have 1.2 million followers on Facebook. Is that correct?
Oh, 1.3.
1.3. Oh yeah, just left out 100,000 people. How did you get comfortable doing this?
I have no freaking idea, dude. I wouldn't say I'm comfortable. First off, I am not comfortable. But yeah, it's kind of like walking down a boardwalk in a Speedo, you know. You're not comfortable.
I don't know if I've ever heard that comparison before. That's a good one.
I'm just saying, you want to know how uncomfortable it is? That's it. So just get it, now you got to get that image out of your mind. Sorry everyone, I'm sorry about that. But I'll tell you how it happens. Okay, so Miles, you don't know the story, right? Miles didn't tell the story. I don't want to tell the story twice, but Miles came to me about 2 years ago. Now I've been in my one shop that I built in 1993. I've been in business, renting, different places. I went from the storage unit. Yeah, I told you storage unit, but I went from a storage unit to like a 4-bay shop in an industrial area, and then and then I finally found some ground, and I built a building in 1993. And this office is actually, I've been in this office since, what is that, 20, that's 33 years now. I've had the business 36. So 33 years. This is my dog pound. And so Miles came to me 2 years ago. We were trying to buy a building next door, which is an old Les Schwab. And it was actually the first Les Schwab in Utah. And they weren't doing very well in there. They just weren't, it wasn't a store that they were doing well in. I made them an offer a couple of times. They told me to go pound sand, and then I made another offer, and finally they did. So moving forward quickly with that. So now I've expanded. So now I got 4 acres of ground, 33,000 square feet. That's how we expanded to
Wow.
30 bays. And all of a sudden I'm like, okay, we're going to need to make a little more money around here. And Miles is like, Dad, we've been building engines for 20 years. Why don't we go and sell them across the nation? Like Jasper, he actually said that. I was like, yeah, well, Jasper's, they got a 500,000 square foot facility. If I'm lucky, I'm building 15, 20 motors a month, son. And he's like, well, let's go nationwide. So I looked at advertising. I went to 2 ad agencies. It was close to $1 million for a 1-year ad campaign that would saturate the United States in that market. 700, 800,000. And you can always mark stuff up 10, 20% because, welcome to planet Earth. So anyway, so basically I came back to him and I said, that ain't happening, buddy. I'm not taking $1 million and doing this. And then, so I bought the building next door. We're trying to get it rehabbed. I've got the additional mortgage and, that stuff. I'm in a pretty good spot. I don't owe any money. That was new to, I had a mortgage now and I hadn't had one for a while. And plus I got to equip it and all the, equipment and all that stuff. And I have I've learned early on, make sure you can avoid cash flow issues. So all of a sudden I've got a cash flow issue, because I'm spending money like a wild man again. And I'm like, oh. And Miles says, let's do social media. Well, at the time we had 2 years ago in this month, we had 200 followers across all platforms.
That is crazy.
All platforms, 200, man. And so it was like, call the cousins, call the aunts, the uncles, grandma and grandpa, and tell them to like, because we just put out a video. That was the 200. That's how big our family is, and I mean, that's super extended family, and so anyway, I'm at church one day. This is a true story. Now, everybody out there, this is important. Look to the old man here. Okay, come in close. I'm going to tell you this. This is old man wisdom stuff right here. Live the best life you can. Work your butt off. Don't give up. And occasionally, the great one kicks something your way. Pay attention. Occasionally that does happen. People like to call that luck. But you've worked hard, you put yourself in the right situations, and then occasionally you're like, wow, how did that happen? So I'm at church one day, and an older couple that me and my wife know real well are there, and they're there with a younger couple and a little boy. And we go over to just introduce ourselves, just to be friendly. And the guy says, I shake his hand. His name, I get a little emotional here, so let me just catch my breath. Sergey and Nastya, that's his wife, and he's from Russia. I shake his hand, and he's, and bam, I can instantly tell he's Russian because his English was terrible. And so in my head, this is how selfish I am. In my head, I'm thinking, gosh, I hope he worked on Russian tanks because I need a mechanic. And I said, so what do you do in America? He goes, I'm a refugee. I've escaped Russia, and that's another story how he got to America. But he's got a visa, and I go, what do you do? I will wash windows. And I'm like, well, I got this new building that I'm rehabbing. I need painting. The windows. I could use an extra hand. And I told him that. He comes and with his wife, and they have a 6-year-old son at the time. Comes to the store with his wife. And dude, they're cleaning windows. I mean, that dude's got razor blades in the corner. I'm thinking this cat is. I'm having him do my house. Miles is having him do. This guy can wash windows. So he's around here and he's cleaning up and he's walking around the other building, which is where the machine shop is. And one day he comes into this office and he knocks on the door. He's like, and I said, sir, you come in. And this is the best English he had. He goes, I make you one. I said, and I thought in my head, he's trying to tell me, thank you so much. I think you're a number one guy. I make you one. Can you understand that? And I said, well, that's great, Sergey. I said, I think you're one too. What am I going to say? I don't speak Russian. And he looks at me like, no, I make you one. I says, no, I think you're one. We're doing this back and forth. And he walks out, he goes back and he starts washing windows. Then we try to talk. His wife speaks better English. And I'm talking. So I find out this guy has escaped Russia because it's compulsory. They make you serve in the army when you're 18 for 2 years. European countries do that a lot. And now they were going to redraft him. And in Russia right now, well, this is 3 years ago, during this war, they don't draft you, send you a letter, say, please show up. They come into your town in the dead of night. They drag you out of bed, put you on a truck, and you're gone, bro. And he knew this was happening. He knew this was happening because they're coming to his town. So him and his wife take 2 backpacks. They escape across the border to Uzbekistan, then get to Turkey, then get to Mexico City, and they're waiting a year while they're getting their A1 visa squared away. And that's how they got into America and were at church that day. But anyway, an A1 visa. So then the guy goes, he shows me his YouTube. The guy's got 1.5 million followers on YouTube doing Russian cooking. And Russian cooking is like, it's kind of like Polynesian cooking with a kick. It's just weird. They're cooking in pits. They cook the whole animal. You know what I mean? It's different. And he's a great. And so I'm thinking, oh, he's a cook. But I'm like, he's got 1.5 million followers. So then he said, I make you one. And so then him and his wife. So I'm thinking, okay, so we get the building painted, we get all the rehab, we get moved in there, and then I say, go to work, do your thing, do your magic. So he's out in the shop and he's recording the guys and stuff, and then about 2 weeks go by, and this is what I hear. I'm like, Sergey, come in, and he's like, no, I make you one. And so he says, you got to do this. And I'm like, there's no freaking way I'm doing that, dude. I'm a 63-year-old guy. This is 2 years ago. I am not going to go out there and do social media. I don't have Facebook. I don't want Instagram. TikTok is, I don't do any of this stuff. I'm a mechanic. My son Miles is like, Dad, you got to do this. This is you're a nutbag. You're funny, because my son's looking at, he's like, Dad, you really are a character. He says, I think you'd be good at this. So then I tried the first 2 weeks. I was horrible at it. I go home every day. My wife's, I'm whining. I'm doing what I know I shouldn't be doing. My life is so horrible. I can't do this. It's like I'm walking in the Speedo down the boardwalk in Miami Beach. It's terrible. I got all this going on in my head. And so what I did was I did what I tell everybody to do. How's that working out for you, bro? How's that little mind crap going? If you got to walk down a boardwalk in a Speedo, dude, you better be loud and proud and just be okay about it, dude. And fake it till you make it. And so I come to work the next day and I just did it. I just said, I'm going to do this the best I can do because the other way is not working for me. 2 weeks I've been a sniveling, and so that was it. I know that's a long story, Jay. I know it is.
Oh, it was so good though. Like,
I don't know how you're gonna cut that up, but honestly, dude, that's it.
Oh, it's so good. And we are going to get your son Miles on the podcast as well. We're going to talk more about that side of it. But to wrap this thing up, what an absolute pleasure this conversation has been. I have thoroughly enjoyed my time talking to you. If you're the kind of guy that I think you could just talk to forever, right? Like you just you have a great personality. You've built a heck of a business and a heck of a social following, and just a genuinely good dude. So I appreciate you taking time with us today, and it was an absolute pleasure.
A good dude. That's a nice compliment, dude. I like that. Thank you.
That wraps up another episode of Beyond the Wrench. If you liked this episode, please show your support by rating and following the podcast. You can also watch the video interviews on WrenchWay's YouTube channel. Speaking of WrenchWay, did you know Beyond the Wrench is managed and produced by the WrenchWay team? WrenchWay is an online community dedicated to promoting and improving automotive and diesel careers. We help technicians find the best shops to work at, and we also help auto, diesel, and CTE instructors get more support from local industry. You can learn more by visiting wrenchway.com.